Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the New Adolescence.
The show that's still growing up.
I'm Tyler.
And I'm JP. Today we'll be talking about how you have a voice on the internet and why that might not be okay, or maybe it is. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Today's sponsor is Google. Do you ever question things in life? Well, now you don't. Just Google them. Do the right thing. Why did we throw do the right thing on there?
Do the right thing, baby. You're on the internet. But I'm a Bing guy for sure. So I don't know. I don't know if I align with the sponsor today. I'm a
Y-
big Bing fan.
That's because you're from Seattle, dude. I actually, it is a little bit ridiculous how much your geographic location changes, um, like what internet things that you're engaged with, because it really doesn't matter, right? But you probably have this loyalty to Microsoft and Amazon, right?
No. Maybe. I have started using Amazon more as of lately, but I don't know. Maybe that's just because it's convenient.
It is incredibly convenient. Um, well, I have a hot take for us today, and my hot take is this. JP, crypto is down.
It's down, and I always knew it would go down,
As soon as
but
you
maybe
invested
it'll.
in it, it went down.
I know it did,
It's
but
okay.
maybe it'll go back up.
I'm,
Maybe
I'm
it'll
not
go back up.
I'm not trying to razz you too hard on that, but you did get me on GameStop quite a bit. My actual hot take today is this that I want to go on the record as saying that Dungeons and Dragons is a great way to make friends and to continue friendships. I have been adventuring with a Dungeons and Dragons party for the last I think 2 years now, and like the last year or so of it has been online, and I'm like a state away from or several states away from most of the people that I play with. But it's like been one of the most consistent and like fun things because we play weekly that I like look forward to every week, and I honestly it felt like it helped me get through quarantine.
Huh? I don't know how I feel about that. I support that you like D&D. I don't know if that's ever something I will get into. I just don't. I don't know. I feel like video games is my version of D&D.
Bro, you used to play Magic the Gathering.
I did, but that was more. I would still play Magic the Gathering, but again, that's that. I like that social interaction, but I think it's more the competitive nature that I like. I
Mm,
like being able to win. I like that there's a winner and a loser. And there's a beginning and end. I don't know about the open end, make your own story. I don't know if that's with me. Also, I've done D&D maybe once or twice, and I think I did a Star Wars one, and the whole time all I wanted was a lightsaber, and people kept saying that JP, you're supposed to be your character, not be JP controlling your character. And I never really understood that because I was like, I just want like I want this to happen to my character, but you're not allowing me to do it because you're saying I'm not being who my character is. And I never really understood like that mindset. Like
you weren't trying to role play, you're just trying to be
I was
yourself
just trying to
in
be myself. Yeah.
yeah, that's fair. I feel like I think there's a case to be made for each of those things. What about you? What's your hot take, JP?
Uh well, my hot take is more of a hot update. Your boy's got an ankle injury. You know, I played
No.
many seasons of swimming, track and field, soccer, basketball, football, and my right ankle is sprained right now. Actually, I'm saying it's sprained. I don't think it's broken because I feel like I'd be in a lot more pain. Don't know. I haven't had a medical professional look at it, but it's the size. It's the size of a tennis ball. It's pretty bad.
It's still swollen.
Well, I re heard it on Saturday. I heard it beginning of last week, running with Satchmo. And Satchmo decides to stop and pick up every stick, and I went off the curb and rolled it pretty badly. Then I played basketball on Saturday, full 5-on-5 with a bunch of people, no masks on, and I rolled it, and I played for at least 300 minutes because my Apple Watch, I can turn it on and tells me how long I've been playing. And on like the 301st minute, I rolled it on someone's ankle as I was going up for a rebound, and it was the same ankle, and now it's the size of a tennis ball.
You played basketball for 5 hours.
Yeah, a
What?
long time,
There's
like
no,
nonstop.
absolutely no way that I believe that. But
I If you had an Apple Watch or get Colleen to look at my little my activities for, you'll see it was like 4,000 calories and like 300 minutes of basketball. It's insane. And at one point, like I was walking, like I was like walking, jogging down the court. That's how tired I was.
hmm yep, that would make sense after 5 hours of basketball. Uh, Dude, I'm sorry to hear that your ankle is not getting better. I'm not sure about the wisdom of you playing basketball on a hurt ankle, but I appreciate that you have a warrior spirit through it all.
I mean, imagine, you get the opportunity to play 5-on-5 basketball with full 5-on-5 teams, and everyone is there to play basketball. I mean, that opportunity doesn't come knocking every all the time.
That's fair. Was this with friends?
Yeah, I was with some friends from college, Parker, who you'll meet, and Sean Riley. You'll meet them at my upcoming bachelor party. Location is undisclosed, and but yeah, they were there, and then some of I think Parker's coworkers or something, or his friends from Tacoma were there. So we had a full squad.
Nice.
It was great. It was
That's
a lot of
awesome.
fun.
Dang. Well, I hope you recover soon.
We'll
Well,
see. I did a Peloton ride today,
of course you did. Rest ice compression elevation, JP.
and
Rice.
get on the Peloton.
And get on the Peloton. I feel like you might be okay on the Peloton. Anyway, I wanted to talk about who has the right to say what they say on the internet these days. And I wanted to bring it all the way back to 1789, the Constitution of the United States of America, Amendment 1, also known as the
Ooh,
First
little
Amendment.
history lesson.
Yes, also known as the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. And focus a little bit on the freedom of speech right there. And I think that's what a lot of people think about in the First Amendment, because that honestly is one of the biggest questions of our democracy a lot of the time. But
Hmm.
fast forward a little bit to 1978. In the courtroom, Federal Communications Commission, FCC versus Pacifica, 1978. Um, I feel like I see a little bit of a different message being broadcasted, and I will share with you guys a quote that one of the justices who voted in favor of the hearing, in favor of the outcome, uh, ended the hearing with. So he says this. He says, first, the broadcast media have established a uniquely pervasive presence in the lives of all Americans. Patently offensive, indecent material presented over the airwaves confronts the citizen, not only in public, but also in the privacy of the home, where the individual's right to be left alone plainly outweighs the First Amendment rights of an intruder. Because the broadcast audience is constantly tuning in and out, prior warnings cannot completely protect the listener or viewers from an unexpected program content. To say that one may avoid further offense by turning off the radio when he hears indecent language is like saying that the remedy for an assault is to run away after the first blow. One may hang up on an indecent phone call, but that option does not give the caller a constitutional immunity or avoid a harm that has already taken place. And for a little bit of context, this court case was actually in response to a radio broadcast that was not being censored and apparently had some rather lewd language included in it. And they ruled that the um, the broadcasters actually needed to censor future content, which is really why you can't cuss on the radio and why there's all these non-explicit versions of songs that are played on the radio these days.
Huh. My first argument back at this, it looks like they already talked about in this quote. I was gonna say, why not just turn off the radio or just avoid that program? But I guess when you put it in the context of when somebody hits you, and it could be seen as the same as why don't you just run away after the first blow? The damage is already done. That makes sense.
Yeah,
I
and
still feel like media, though, you can turn it off and on.
well, I think a couple of things to take away from this guy's argument. Uh, Basically, he's saying like it's become such a deeply ingrained part of American life at this point that really media is impossible to turn off, which is in a sense kind of true. Like you could be a no TV person, but um, you still might see things on billboards, and like depending on what's on that billboard, you might be offended by what you're seeing. Um, and so like there has to, like I think what he's saying is there has to be some sort of regulation of what the public is exposed to uh, without really being able to avoid it.
Yeah, and definitely having indecent language over the air radio waves is makes sense to me. Also, if you're just listening to something in your car, I mean, who there's no saying if that person just goes off the rails. Like it is a live mic when they're on the radio. I mean, they could say anything. Same with I feel like sometimes in TV, I'm thinking of like the Super Bowl in 2001 where Justin Timberlake ripped off like the shirt of Janet Jackson or whatever, but that wasn't censored.
Hmm.
Like anything could happen.
That
I
is
don't know.
true. That
Those are
and
things.
and that's actually an interesting case to bring up because I was doing a little bit of research on this, and essentially like TV broadcasters after that incident, um, the broadcasting agency of the Super Bowl that year, I think was CBS, and they got fined like $550,000 or something like that because of that incident. And what's really they didn't have much control, but after that, people started scaling back live performances on television. So it like really scared people because the Federal Communications Commission really, um, I think they got a little more strict in what they were in the penalties that they were slapping on people afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, it really is when you are showing something live like that. I mean, anything can happen.
Yeah, it's definitely a risk. Like I
It
think
is a risk.
one of the funniest things that I have seen in a while is like occasionally I'll watch like freestyle rap videos, or even if you see like someone perform on like the Daily Show or something, um, like the actual artists are not censored. Like they have to censor themselves on air. And so there was this one episode where Kanye West was performing, and and he would just kind of grunt whenever there was a swear word, and I was like actually kind of impressed that he had the control to know when there was a swear word coming, and to just kind of censor it out himself. But that's kind
I
of
like
where we're
that.
at.
Yeah,
However, on the other hand, we have like I think new broadcasters, which are kind of a gray area. Things like Netflix and HBO. Uh, I feel like we're almost explicitly made. Well, HBO especially, I feel like was almost explicitly made to be able to broadcast content that wouldn't be allowed on normal cable shows. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? Like Game of Thrones.
Mhm. I think it's definitely a gray area where these companies control some chunk of the media market, and they choose what they put on it, whether it's nudity, violence, language, the type of show it might be, if it's something that might be challenging or challenges the narrative. I mean, they have the power. Is that okay? What do you think, Tyler? Do you think companies should have this power? Like they definitely control a big chunk of what we consume media wise.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting question, right? And that's kind of like all of that background was kind of to set up that question, right? Is that okay? And I think where we find ourselves today is this major gray area of who controls what we view, who controls who gets to broadcast what, and are we doing it the right way right now, right? Because we have quite a few examples of different media platforms that people are able to broadcast them from, right? And I think if we kind of look at where we started and where we are now, it looks quite a bit different, right? Because at a certain point in the United States, really only mass media conglomerates were able to put out any sort of broadcast at all, right? Like even before television, the main people who were broadcasting anything to the general public was print newspaper, right?
Yep.
And so like we moved from that, which I mean more or less were professionals writing it, all the way through like casual amateur blogging to YouTube to Twitter and Facebook. And I feel like where we're at right now is live stream has become more and more popular. TikTok, extremely short form media, has become more and more popular. Instagram, Reddit, which is like semi anonymous and is kind of just controlled by the mob, has become more and more popular. Um, and I think we're moving from this place of extremely regulated, clear-cut definition of lines, which is like how television was censored, how newspapers were kind of kept in check for a long time, all the way to this point where basically anyone can say anything they want to on the internet, and it's really hard to say whether that's right or wrong right now.
Right. And I think, yeah, exactly. Where we're at now is definitely just that quick, fast media, quick, small bites, as our friend Tommy likes to say. It's just we consume things so fast, things stay relevant for less than weeks now. I think
Moments.
that's yeah, they're moments. It's incredibly crazy to like look back and see how things have like changed so quickly in just like in a year. And I think that helps lead into my thought is that goes along with the quick fast media is just the power of like a headline. Like we just consume things so fast that it kind of we shape and judge our thoughts and how we look at things before we even really dive into it. And the one thing that I think of with broadcasting and news outlets is the power of the headline. I don't know if you know this, Tyler, but a lot of major news platforms, there's someone that writes the headline, and then there's the reporter who writes the story, and they don't always collab or like discuss like what's going on, and so sometimes they're unintentionally the headline doesn't really align to the article, and so they can be misleading. And I was just the thing I wanted to look up was just Tom Brady. I just searched Tom Brady on the internet and I found three articles that all talked about the same thing but had three different headlines, and I was wondering how you might feel about them. One of them was Tampa Bay Buccaneers coach Bruce Arians told Tom Brady, "Veterans don't be here for OTA practice." That was one headline.
Okay.
The next one is Bruce Arians is okay with Tom Brady hosting offsite workouts with Bucks pass catchers.
Okay.
And then the last one, if I can see it, um, don't know if I can see it here.
Well, I have to say, even those first two are giving like wildly different sentiments to what is being said in the article.
Yeah. Then the next one is Tom Brady hosts offsite workouts with Bucks pass catchers. And so it leads you to like don't be here, like he doesn't want him there at all. Then the next one it says he's okay with them not here. But actually the end of it says but wants them at the practice facilities.
Hmm.
So when I read the actual article, Bruce Arians is okay with Tom Brady taking the lead and doing offsite practices, but he prefers them to do it at the facilities just in case anyone gets injured is the main thing.
Hmm.
And deeper than that, the don't be here kind of throws it off like he doesn't want veterans to be there. But when you read the article, he does want veterans to be there for meetings and team building experiences because there's new rookies and the younger players. He just doesn't want them. He doesn't need them to be there. It's not that he doesn't want them to be there. He doesn't need them there for the practices because those are meant for younger players or people who aren't starters so they can get more reps.
Hmm.
And he does want them there because he wants them to practice at the facilities for in case there's injuries because for legal reasons if they get hurt off the facilities that's considered a non-football injury and so that kind of plays into people's contracts and people don't get paid and things like that.
Hmm.
So it's just interesting with those three different articles. They all give you three different opinions or feelings, but they don't all explain really what the situation was.
Yeah, clearly there is like a major spin on each of those headlines. Uh, and probably they were written with the effect of hopefully getting as many clicks as possible to generate as much ad revenue as possible because more visitors equals more money. And uh, to be honest, like I'm a little bit frustrated and worried about where this like more clicks equals more money is going. I think on every level of media consumption because
Yeah,
like people will just write things, right? Like most people will read the headline of that and feel like they got most of the article uh, through the headline and maybe did not even like do the further research on their own. And so maybe I mean maybe it's part of the consumer's responsibility to actually do their own research and take every headline with a grain of salt. But at the same time, it's a little bit irresponsible of journalism companies to have spins like they do on different headlines or even to write things in an effort to get more clicks, right? There's no more neutrality anymore. It's all just for clicks and visits to your site.
you see it on YouTube now. You see it on Instagram, Facebook. I mean, you see like things like with The Bachelor, like this Bachelor gossip, click, click, click.
Yep.
You know, Hannah Brown is hanging out with Tyler. Are they dating? And it's just like I remember one time like I think Hannah went to visit Tyler to like console because he like lost his grandmother mother or something. But they were spinning it like that they were dating and they were like off in Miami like on it. But she was just there as like a friend and he had lost someone close to them
Hmm.
to him. And it's just like but they're just doing it just so you click on their stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, there's really only a few formulas I feel like that really generate the majority of clicks on the internet. Uh, One of them just being that sex sells, gossip sells, anger sells, right? Like Donald Trump when he was the president, he was the greatest clickbait of all time. Like you could get anybody, myself included, to click on a title every single day of Donald Trump doing another more ridiculous thing. And
Yeah.
like it works. Like there are really only a few ways that um, media companies get us to like click and respond to the things that they post and in general they work and that maybe is the problem, right? Like that's why positive news is not really like a big thing. Everyone's always like, oh, I want to hear more positive news in my day, but it just doesn't generate clicks like negative news does. Like negative people like look at negative news like a car crash. Like you can't turn away from it when it's happening. You have to know more about it and dig deeper into it. um,
The story. They're there for the story.
right. Yes. Uh, and so, I mean, like, in questioning, like, is this all responsible? Are we doing this the right way right now? I feel like a couple of events recently have kind of opened the door to discussion a little bit more of, who has the right to regulate these things, who is going to assume the mantle of authority in these things. And like for since their existence, like news companies have kind of been regulated internally and by sponsors a little bit um, as to what they will say. But if you don't answer to your chief editor who has the brand name on their back, uh, you can really get away with saying quite a bit. But lately there's been a few things in the news I feel like that have really kind of changed the game and changed how we're looking at this. And first and maybe most notably was Donald Trump getting kicked off of Twitter permanently. Um, which really was stemmed from the Capitol riots, right? Like that was kind of the final straw, even after Twitter and Facebook and everybody tried to like put little comments on there saying like the like disputed the what did they say? They said like the claims in this tweet are disputed and have not been fact checked or like are directly in contradiction, especially around the election season when Donald Trump was kind of like setting up his case for a rigged election. Um,
Yeah.
they were setting up the case of he's not fact checking himself right now. Um, but
Yeah,
then
I think it brings to light, like, for example, that example is super extreme, but it shows like if you stick out that much or go that much against the grain, that these companies that control a lot of media consumption, they still have the power to say, we don't feel like this aligns with us as a value, our values, or what we want people that use our platforms value, so we are not going to show it. But I guess that brings back the question: is that too much power? And it does open up a big gray area.
right, suddenly we have tech companies which are purportedly neutral, or at least you would think should be neutral,
Hmm.
have kind of masqueraded as neutral, right, for their entire existence. In a way, have targeted one side over the other, right? Because uh, because Donald Trump was clearly on the Republican side, um, himself being a Republican, and for Twitter to to choose out of everyone Donald Trump to kick off of their network, like was that the right move? I mean, you could argue that he had spread so much lies and misinformation, and had incited such a violent act in the Capitol riots that it made sense, like no matter what political party he was under, for him to be kicked off of it. But I think people on the Republican side of the matter, people who were Trump supporters, feel like he was targeted by another conspiracy by the left,
Yeah.
which is problematic, right? Like if we have big tech companies really interfering with our politics to the extent that they have, or really deciding who gets a voice, like they are suddenly getting an unfair advantage in shaping the how this country looks.
Yeah. Um, Gosh, this is such an extreme case, but I just think if there's something that's that outside the lines, I don't know. It's just where you stand, I guess. It's where you stand. That's all I got.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think really kind of an interesting, on the opposite end, if you were following, if you were big on the internet in 2017, um, there was kind of this big movement for net neutrality, which, to be honest, when it was happening, I had no idea what net neutrality was indicating or was about really, but it really stemmed from John Oliver on his show, making the case for net neutrality, which essentially is this idea that internet service providers cannot choose who has access to what or not. Right? If we
Yeah.
moved away from this idea of net neutrality, potentially internet could become more of like a state or private controlled thing, um, such as you might see in like China, where the government and in the case of non-net neutrality, it would be private companies have this ability to regulate like who has access to what websites or who has access to what services on the internet. And in reality, it would kind of become almost like this competing cable company sort of thing, where certain internet providers have access to certain websites, and it would be that kind of this interesting thing. But the big takeaway and like kind of the big argument that the net neutrality supporters were making was that we don't want to give this sort of regulation to these internet service providers and have them choose what we can access or not access.
Yeah.
We don't want them censoring our content or um, choosing our content for us. which I can kind of get behind. But it is interesting because really the big tech companies, the same people that are doing this, that are saying that we need net neutrality, uh, we need a world where internet service providers aren't choosing which services we can access on our internet connection, are the same people who are now trying to regulate Donald Trump and politicians. So I think kind of problematically, you find big tech companies on both sides when it benefits them the most.
Yeah, yeah, and I think without net neutrality, I've been to Dubai a few times, and I know that the internet you can't access everything. Like I know, like I couldn't like access like Facebook, like I couldn't access like just like regular stuff off my phone because they didn't allow it there, or you needed like a special login or something.
Hmm.
And I always thought that was interesting because I was like, oh, that's it. Just like Facebook to me doesn't seem like something bad that I can just look on. I want to see what my friends are up to, but it's something that's controlled, and so I feel like I'm on the side of net neutrality for sure. Everything being open, especially what I choose to do on the internet, but I do think each of us individually have the power to control how we drive in the internet. Like for example, I like to play my video games on the internet and like to look at Instagram and YouTube, but I know I shouldn't go on the web searching for, you know, I don't even know like where to buy like an illegal gun or something, like
Going on the
I
dark web.
yeah, I know not to go searching for, how to like yeah, buy a gun or where how to make a bomb. Like that's not something that like I want to do, but I can see how with net neutrality that's something that could be maybe found on the internet. I don't know. I have never looked. And if
Hmm.
someone's listening, I've never looked, I promise, don't come find me. But like I can see how like that like there could be a forum somewhere where there's like a broadcast of something like that. And something that comes to mind is I remember reading a news story randomly because I never look at the news, but someone on YouTube, on a random YouTube page, put a comment, I'm going to harm this school on this day at this address. And it was and someone who just happened to be reading the comments saw that and they were able to get in touch with the law enforcement and get that figured out. And but that's what happens with, I feel like net neutrality and things aren't regulated, that someone in some random YouTube video page can just write that and nothing can be done about it unless someone sees it. I don't
Right.
know if that makes sense, but yeah.
Yeah, like if we have a deregulated internet, right, like anything is possible. And the reality is, like with net neutrality, if we do embrace net neutrality, like that is a form of the government regulating it on some level. So that kind of gives them some power to choose what is going to be on it. But I guess the good news is that it is equal for everyone. Everyone kind of gets access to equal things if you're in the United States.
It's
Um,
not specific companies controlling it.
right. Which, pick your poison a little bit. But yeah,
Yeah.
like if we do have a deregulated internet where really anything is acceptable, anything is possible, I think kind of what you're getting at is this idea that really it's going to be more and more up to the consumer to choose what they expose themselves to or to choose what they engage with on the internet. Um, and I think like if my like future forecast is correct in any way, I think that's what we're moving towards is really it's going to be more and more up to the consumer because we live in an age where everything is accessible. Anything is almost anything is permissible on the internet if you're in the right place. And so it's really going to be up to you as a consumer to choose what you engage with, and it'll be fully your responsibility. And I think what we're seeing is that it's kind of difficult for a lot of people to make responsible decisions, and um, human beings as a reality are incredibly bad at knowing what actually will make them happy. Uh, and so we have these like sellers and of things on the internet or and advertisers on the internet, and they kind of are choosing and manipulating for us how we engage with things on the internet.
Oh yeah, it's so bad. I know I looked up. I don't know if you heard of something called the all pan, which is like this pan you can do anything. Like I searched that on my work computer one time just because the Bella said something about it, and for the next 3 days on my iPhone on Instagram there was ads for it, and there's probably gonna be ads on it because I just said it. Like it's crazy. Like I just noticed this within like the last 3 years. Like I know there's that companies pay for people's data or what they look at on the internet. I know that's a thing, but it's just that's so manipulative.
Yeah.
I don't think it's wrong, but I think it's because it doesn't. It doesn't, one, it doesn't affect me, and two, I know not to get uh, sold or get distracted by that. But I do feel like it can have a harmful effect on a good amount of people.
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the narratives of the rich get richer and the poor get poorer is that the rich are people who know how to take advantage of the tools of the internet, whereas the poor are people that are getting taken advantage of on the
Yeah,
internet. Um, and I feel like honestly, like that is one of the narratives that doesn't get enough face time for the general public, which is that like people who are making money on the internet are actively trying to manipulate everyone around them uh, into giving them money for whatever service they're offering. They're actively trying to convince you and manipulate you that you need the service that they have for you, which is really, I mean, it's the basis of advertising, but uh, I think more and more is becoming more and more problematic as people are getting smarter about how to engage consumers, and people are getting smarter about how to uh, bring people over into purchasing their product. Um, like people getting smarter about that is basically people becoming more and more manipulative about those things.
yeah. Everybody truly has the ability to broadcast to the world. I could go onto my Instagram and take a picture of my water bottle and say, "Everybody, I got this great water bottle from water bottle company A, and it's 10.99. Here's the link to the website. Go get you some." Like I have the ability to promote that, and people that look at me, and that's like not that many people. Like they could be influenced by something that I do. I get influenced by people all the time. See a cool picture. For example, you guys just went to Doughzone or Dough whatever the donut
Dosho.
convention, Dough show, and I immediately am like, one, I want a donut. Two, I want to be at that location next time you guys are there. And three, I want to know more about it, so I'm gonna go look up it. But when I woke up that day, I was not thinking about donuts until I saw it. So it's crazy how like so many people have the ability to broadcast the world, and I think it's okay. Where I don't think it's okay is if you're letting it, dictate how you're living your life, or if you're letting it consume you negatively. I don't think that's okay. Or if you're just being intentionally uh, negligent or even malicious with your broadcasts. I don't think that's okay.
Right. And to be quite frank, I have difficulty with saying that it's okay for every single person to be able to assume that mantle of responsibility of broadcasting to the entire world, right? And I think the problem is that the only people who are getting banned or blocked from the internet right now are people who have like are people who have done something where someone else got hurt, right? Like Trump did not get in trouble for anything for a single thing that he said, a single lie that he spread until somebody actually got hurt in the Capitol riots. And right, this could have been prevented if there was some sort of measure of saying like who was allowed to broadcast to the world or not, right? Like I think truthfully the ability to broadcast on the internet is uh, at least as world changing in a positive or negative way as the ability to drive a car, right? Like you can make or break someone's life by what you say on the internet. Uh, I think a case in point being cyberbullying, which we hear about as kids, but still happens, I think, to adults as well. Um, and we require a driver's license for people to be able to drive a car, but we don't require anything for anyone to be able to post something to the internet. And I think some of the most egregious crimes in the world have been things that are said on the internet.
Yeah. It, it's so hard to be definitive on either side. I feel very strongly that it's like what you look at on the internet or what you let and affect you from the internet is ultimately my choice. But when I'm the outsider looking in and I see, for example, the former president inciting these Capitol riots, it's hard for me to not say, look, you caused this because you were putting flames to the fire, you were putting wood to the fire, and you built this fire that ultimately was destructive. So it's so hard because when I look at other situations, I see it, but in my own life, I don't see it because I don't let it change me or I don't let like the internet consume me like that. I don't
Hmm.
know.
Right.
It's so
Well,
hard.
I mean, if we're gonna say like it's somebody's responsibility to regulate the internet, or it's there's like some set of rules. Like, is there a good way or a real way even to limit what is said on the internet appropriately, or and who chooses that, right? Because right now we're seeing that big corporations are kind of making that choice of who is allowed on the internet, but they're doing it very loose-handedly, I would say. Like, most things are pretty tolerated on the internet. Like, is there anything that actually regulates what is said on the internet right now? Or is there anything that should be regulating what is said on the internet?
I mean, gosh, I don't know. I mean, I feel like there. I mean, there's got to be software out there that's monitoring everything we're saying on the internet for sure. I think us as humans or us as a community or the community that we're part of can regulate each other. Um,
See, that's
I
true.
think
That's an interesting point. Because I think when I think about that, I go right for cancel culture. Like, I think humans regulating other humans kind of just gives responsibility to the mob of common thought of what actually gets regulated, which can be pretty problematic. I think in the past year or so, we've seen that cancel culture can have some really negative side effects and really reduce the amount of true opinions that are displayed on the internet. Um, but I feel
cancel
like that's where
culture.
we're at right now. Like, the big regulation is that people regulate each other on the internet.
Yeah, but gosh, the regulation on the internet, I still feel like it's just cyberbullying back and forth, flaming back and forth. I mean, the one of the things I think about is like Chick-fil-A, how everyone canceled that because of the things that they were saying about the gosh, I don't want to butcher it, but like the LGBT community,
Hmm.
um, and and basically like yeah, we shouldn't support it because of the things they're saying, but it's hard for me to not look at a big line of people in Chick-fil-A and think how many of those people said that they weren't going to support it but are in the line to go get Chick-fil-A right now because either it's convenient or it's something that they like. It's not like the food isn't what wrong them, it's the people that are making the food or own the food is what wrong them,
Hmm.
if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
So
Like,
it's just so like the cancel culture or people can control or like uh people like conducting themselves or like checking each another one another or whatever. I feel like it's so hard because there's no real there's no real like I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but there's no real checking and balances from humans, I feel like.
yeah, and there's no rule book. Nobody ever got a rule book of how to behave on the internet, right?
Yeah.
And so it's really all up to opinion. It's really all just, if someone doesn't share your same beliefs, we're gonna cancel them. Like, that's really what we can do. the best thing we can do is silence somebody on the internet. Or I guess the most hurtful thing is to silence their voice on the internet, which is really problematic, right? Like it eliminates free speech by not by the government, but it eliminates free speech by basically contradictory opinions, and people can become very violent uh, on the internet, like out of basically because someone else disagrees with them. Um, and so yeah, I think what we're seeing is this cancel culture is probably not the best, but I'm not sure who else is able to regulate the internet besides the mob mentality of people choosing what is right and what is wrong, right? Like if we give politicians that ability, if we give corporations that ability, like there's flaws in each of those things, and so it becomes kind of a problematic system
Yeah. I mean, best case scenario, it would be the people, the users, the me and yous of the world. But I mean, the world is so divided, and if someone doesn't agree with you, there's immediately a clash there. It's just like it's like human nature. It's like there's opinions on everything. You can't. Not everyone's going to necessarily agree 100% with your values. There's always going to be someone. There's always going to be those haters, as they say.
for sure. And to
I'm
me,
sure there's haters on our show.
I don't know if we're big enough to have haters yet, but we'll get there. And I think for me, uh, like that's a perfect place. Like you saying, it's human nature for us to differ in opinions. And in reality, it's human nature for us to fight for our opinions, right? And I think becoming more and more human nature for us to no holds barred, absolutely try and destroy one another for having different opinions. And that's a perfect place, I think, for where law is supposed to step in, right? Um, like law is supposed to be the suppressant to human nature that makes us perform in a way that society can function. And I think the wilder and wilder the internet gets, the less and less functional it's going to be. And so I'm in favor of someone else regulating the internet on some level, if only to help human beings be kind to one another or not, and not just like attack one another over differing opinions.
Yeah,
And
I
that might be
think
kind of a hot take in itself.
no. I mean, I can get on board with that. I don't think there's to be someone regulating the internet that heavily, but I do, and can see and agree that yeah, there's got to be some line here that you know, there's got to be some boundary line where we can think, if I post this comment right now, Tyler, you look fat and your hair sucks. Is there a boundary? Like, is that outside the boundary or is that inside the boundary? Because right now I can say it, no repercussion. I'm
Hmm.
thinking maybe on Twitch, I could say like I could say something totally like mean or hurtful, and what they're gonna ban my account. I'll just create a new account with a new email and say the thing. You know,
Hmm.
like there's no real like boundary or way to regulate that. So I can see that there. I can see definitely see the side of the argument that there should be something that's regulating for
Well,
sure.
JP, my last question for you. Should you,
Hit
JP Campbell, member of the New Adolescents, be allowed to broadcast on the internet?
100% yes.
Why?
Because I think I'm responsible enough to talk on these airwaves and not say anything crazy and I think I'm also open enough to hear if I am being crazy or someone doesn't like me. I think I'm mature enough to understand that the things I say on here isn't going to align with everyone, and I'm open to hear the other side if people feel that way, or the aliens in the future that find this recording.
I like that. I think that's a good point, and I think the reality is, we on the New Adolescents, we're not really trying to manipulate anyone. We're not selling anything except maybe this
Brady and the Buccaneers.
this discussion of, yeah, except for Tom Brady. If you're not a Tom Brady fan, then I don't know who you are. He's the goat. Um, but yeah, we're really not trying to manipulate anyone into doing anything. Uh, Nobody's paying us for what we're saying, and so nobody really um, is telling us what to say. Like we're not coming here with an agenda. And I think those are good things to have going for you in a creative space and a creative capacity where other people are going to be listening to you. Uh, and I know some of you might be surprised that we're not making money off of our super high end sponsors like Crayola and Google, but it's true we're not receiving any money from them, and so we're not pushing their agenda. We're really just doing this as a creative outlet for ourselves. And so
And two best friends on the internet.
on the internet, and so I agree with you, JP. I think we're approaching this in a responsible way. I can't say the same for everyone else in the creative space on the internet, um, but I think we're at least trying to do the right thing out here.
Yeah, I think just understanding that what you say is not going to be 100% received greatly, and it's not going to be 100% received negatively. There's going to be people on both sides, and being open to hearing both sides and not, overly reacting one way or the other, I think is a good way to go about it. But what do I know? I'm just a member of the new adolescence, the show that's still growing up.
I've been Tyler.
Oh, we're ended it there. Well, I've been JP.
Thanks for sticking with us through another doozy of an episode. I promise we tried to make these shorter, but some juicy topics coming out right now.
That's right. And next week we've got the fight for our attention. How your iPhone might be taking all your attention away from your real life. We'll look into that.
I love it. Well, JP, thank you, and thank you to our listeners. Until next time,
Thank you, everybody. Have a nice week.
bye bye.